Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on community shared solar opportunities for nonprofit organizations with the New York City Housing Authority. My name is Ron Reisman, and on behalf of my fellow presenters, Daphne Boret-Camguilhem, Ben Foster, and Lori Clark, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this morning for what we hope will be an informative discussion about a very exciting concept to create green jobs in the city while extending solar access to low and moderate income households. Let's briefly go over the agenda for today's webinar. We're going to be providing an overview of the NYCHA funding opportunity. We'll have Lori Clark speaking on that and how it creates synergies with the NYCHA program that we are going to be unveiling this morning, the Public Purpose Shared Solar Program. So we're going to be talking about that program, discussing what the goals are, what the available sites are, and then get into the logistics of the program in terms of the process and the timeline. Finally, we will be soliciting questions from you and hopefully answering those questions during this broadcast. Before we get started, just a few items about participation in today's event. This screenshot that you see here is what you should be seeing on your screen. This shows someone who is in the phone mode as opposed to getting their audio through the computer. But you'll also notice that just below that top square, there's a handouts box. And we have a PDF version of this slide deck available there, so you can download it at any time during the presentation. There are a couple of websites on there that may be helpful to you later on, so we would invite you to download that. You'll also see a question box there, so that will give you the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing them into the question pane. You can send your questions in at any time during this webinar. If you happen to think of something after the webinar is over, you can email it to us at nysolar@cuny.edu. Again, that's nysolar@cuny.edu for any questions that come up after we're done here this morning. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can during the time allotted for this webinar. If we run out of time, or for those questions that come in after we finish, we will post written answers on our New York Solar Map and Portal website, which is www.nysolarmap.com. Again, all of these websites are going to be in the slides, so we would invite you to download the slide deck. What I'd like to do now is turn the presentation over to Lori Clark of NYCHA, who is going to talk about the Revitalize RFP. Lori?
Thanks, Ron, and welcome everybody to this very informative webinar. So on here, slide 4, you can see a little bit of a difference in what the NYCHA Public Proposed Shared Solar Program is looking for. NYCHA is specifically targeting the community-based organizations to propose to RFP 3584 Revitalize, and I'll let Ron and others talk more about the NYCHA program. Can I have the next slide, please? So through Revitalize, NYCHA seeks to bridge the gap in access to clean energy solutions for low to moderate income and environmental justice communities by supporting the planning of community-scale clean energy projects that benefit low to moderate income residents. Support can be the procurement of technical assistance to address key planning and development issues, such as identifying successful models of community engagement, site selection, identifying ownership and finance structures, customer enrollment, and mechanics for the allocation of benefits to the LMI residents. Funded projects must be in and benefit residents of an LMI community or an environmental justice area. The proposer must demonstrate that the majority of the residents have incomes less than 80% of the area median income by referencing resources such as those provided by HUD, or by providing supporting documentation such as poverty or income level by census tract, previous grant awards for low-income programs, concentration of affordable housing, disadvantaged or otherwise underserved residents, or other indicator that the community is largely composed of residents with incomes lower than 80% of the AMI. A project that benefits an environmental justice area must meet the requirements of a potential EJ area as defined by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. A resource that we provided in our webinar was it's policymap.com. They have some granular data to get right down into the zip code area to identify the low income, moderate, and I believe they call it non-moderate, which we call market rate residents. There's $325,000 available in the Revitalize RFP. NYCHA seeks to fund 5 CBOs up to $65,000 per contract. There is a required cost share of 30% of the total project. So, for example, if a proposer requests $44,450 of NYCHA funds, the cost share required is $19,050 for a total project cost of $63,500. And cost share can be in-kind services or additional grant funds that can be leveraged. Cost sharing shall be non-NYCHA funds and can be from the proposer, other team members, and other government or private sources. NYCHA expects that the CBO will partner with other entities necessary to accomplish the task. Therefore, teaming of community organizations, finance institutions, foundations, utilities, local government, and project developers is strongly encouraged. The proposals are due September 11, 2017. NYCHA has moved to an electronic proposal submission platform called Salesforce. If you're familiar with NYCHA's proposal submission process, we usually require a proposal checklist and a disclosure of prior findings of non-responsibility, which are now embedded into that electronic process. It's important that you review the instructions for the electronic process submission, and it may take up to 60 minutes to submit your proposal. And I recommend highly to double check and triple check that all your documents have been uploaded, and you can make any edits and modifications until the due date of September 11th at 5 p.m. Next slide, please. Revitalize is a point of leverage through the NYCHA program. Revitalize is intended to facilitate grassroots community planning and development. Thus, CBOs are the target audience. A CBO may partner with a developer, but the CBO must be the lead proposer. Revitalize funding cannot be used for direct costs associated with implementation of a project. Examples: equipment cost, installation costs. Again, NYCHA encourages the proposers to leverage other sources of funding through their teaming efforts or working with utilities, federal, private, and nonprofit entities for the implementation of the project. The Revitalize effort is about the project planning development process, not so much on the implementation, but the process itself. NYCHA plans to develop best practices for planning a community-scale clean energy project through the creation of toolkits and/or guidance documents to overcome knowledge gaps and accelerate the timeline from project planning to implementation. NYCHA will provide draft toolkits to the projects selected to test and refine throughout the project planning and development process. These toolkits from the Revitalize project will be used to foster technology transfer and replication of processes in similar communities so that best practices are scaled statewide. A proposal may identify the public proposed shared solar through NYCHA as a resource in the Revitalize proposal. But the Revitalize RFP is a competitive solicitation, and there's no guarantee of funding. NYCHA is seeking diversity in project types such as community solar, district geothermal and biomass, microgrid, and aggregated energy efficiency and weatherization, and is seeking geographic distribution of projects across New York State. If you have any further questions regarding the Revitalize RFP, my contact information is there. Thank you. And I think I'll turn it.
And
Yeah.
we're going to turn it over now to Daphne Barrett-Camguilin of NYCHA to talk about the NYCHA Solar Initiative. Daphne?
Yeah, thank you, Ron. So thank you for everybody for joining this webinar today. So my name is Daphne Barrett-Camguilin within the New York City Housing Authority, and my role at NYCHA is to develop renewable and distributed energy projects, and I will be NYCHA speaker for this webinar. So just to provide a bit of context, we have set up this webinar now because of the NYCHA and NYCHA are both currently working on programs that can work together. And we wanted to make sure that community-based organizations and other partners know about these two opportunities and how they can benefit from them. So now that you have had a description from Lori about the NYCHA RFP, I just wanted to mention that a community-based organization that would like to develop a proposal for NYCHA's program could apply for NYCHA RFP, and in the reverse, community-based organizations that intended to apply to NYCHA RFP for solar energy projects could include NYCHA sites in their proposals, and NYCHA will be able to offer letters of support to these proposals. So to now describe the NYCHA solar program, so I just wanted to provide a little bit of context, and I will really briefly describe NYCHA because I think it's important for the purpose of understanding the program. So NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, is a provider of permanently affordable housing in New York City for more than 400,000 low-income residents. And also NYCHA administers the country's largest Section 8 program, supporting another 200,000 low-income individuals with federally subsidized vouchers. So in total, NYCHA serves more than 600,000 low-income New Yorkers. In terms of portfolio, NYCHA owns 178,000 apartments in 2,550 buildings. It is the nation's largest public housing authority. In 2015, NYCHA released its Next Generation NYCHA Plan, a 10-year strategic roadmap that includes the goal of first diversifying funding for the long term and of connecting residents to quality workforce opportunities. Those two goals are directly connected with NYCHA's solar program. A year later, NYCHA published its Next Generation NYCHA Sustainability Agenda, an addendum of its strategic plan focused on meeting the city's goal of reducing the city's greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. And as part of this effort, NYCHA committed to install 25 megawatts of solar capacity on its roof. So to meet this goal, NYCHA is developing two programs in parallel. The first one is focused on constructing large solar installations on roofs with the largest capacities. So buildings with roofs offering a solar capacity greater than 40 kilowatts will be available to developers under this program that we call Commercial Solar Program. The main goal of this program is to increase revenue for NYCHA through roof leases. So solar developers will be selected through requests for proposals, and the first RFP will be out late September this year. Sustainable CUNY hosted a webinar last February to present this program. So if you want to know more about it, please go to the New York Solar Map website and search for NYCHA webinar. Besides this commercial solar program, NYCHA is developing a public purpose shared solar program, which we are presenting in detail today. Under this program, buildings with roofs that offer a solar capacity smaller than 40 kilowatts will be made available to developers, and NYCHA has several hundreds of them. Developers wishing to participate will submit proposals on an online platform, and they will explain in the proposals how their projects are feasible, viable, and will support NYCHA's program goals. One important feature of these two programs is that NYCHA will not buy the power generated by the solar panels installed on its roofs. NYCHA is indeed a public agency and therefore already benefits from very low electric rates. So the power generated by the solar installations will not be able to compete with the current rates, and therefore the framework through which the solar projects have to be developed is community shared solar. Sustainable CUNY will provide a detailed explanation of what community shared solar is later in this webinar. Next, please. So the goals, NYCHA's goals under the Public Purpose Shared Solar Initiative are first to leverage NYCHA's portfolio of small-scale buildings. NYCHA's portfolio is very diverse, from towers to row houses, and all typologies will have a solar role to play if NYCHA is to meet its 25 megawatt goal. So NYCHA wants, with this program, to serve the small building and affordable housing market. Second of all, NYCHA wants this program to provide green jobs to its residents and to put them on career pathways. NYCHA already requires that selected contractors for construction work hire NYCHA residents. But for this solar initiative, it will be one of NYCHA's main goals. NYCHA sees it as a unique opportunity to encourage NYCHA residents down a long-term career pathway in a burgeoning industry, as solar jobs growth was reported upwards of 150% in New York City between 2013 and 2016. Third of all, NYCHA wants this program to benefit low and moderate income customers in letting them gain access to low-cost green power. There is indeed currently no program in New York City helping LMI customers gain access to solar power. Fourth of all, NYCHA wants this program to trigger market opportunities for small-scale solar developers, nonprofits, and local renewable startups, including minority and women-owned businesses. And finally, NYCHA wants this program to contribute to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, as NYCHA committed to cut them 30% in 10 years. And again, as you have noticed, it is not NYCHA's goal under this initiative to buy the power generated by the solar installations. So now I will turn it to Ron, who will explain the community shared solar framework that developers will have to use when putting together proposals for NYCHA's program.
Thank you, Daphne. Well, as you can see from the slide up on the screen now, this is kind of a pictograph of how community shared solar works. Now, the beauty of community shared solar is that the name kind of says it all. It's a solar system that's shared by members of the greater community. Unlike a typical solar system that we often think of where it's installed on the roof of a home or a business to serve the energy needs of that particular host site, home, or business, community shared solar system is installed at one location and is divided into shares for individuals, businesses, or institutions at other locations for what we call off-takers. In other words, they're taking power off the system. So in this representation, if you can imagine that this solar system we see here is sitting on the roof of one of the NYCHA properties, you've got the Smith family in Brooklyn that's taking some kilowatts off of it. You've got an elementary school in the Bronx that's doing the same. And you've got a bodega in Queens that's also sharing in it. So it's a solar system that is not necessarily dedicated to one customer, but the power is distributed to any number of off-takers. And as Daphne mentioned, the solar systems that we expect to be installed under public purpose shared solar will be targeted to low and middle income residents throughout the city. So what are the roles and responsibilities in shared solar? Well, you essentially have four parties. You have the host site, you've got the developer, you've got the subscriber, and you've got the utility. And each has a very specific and defined role. In the case of our program here, NYCHA is going to be the host. Their buildings, their rooftops are going to be the host sites for these solar installations. And that's really all they're going to be. As Daphne mentioned, NYCHA will not be owning the systems, operating the systems, maintaining the systems, taking power off the systems. They're simply going to be the place where the systems are located. These systems will then generate electricity that will be purchased by subscribers, by people, families, households that sign up as off-takers for power from these community shared solar systems. It's the solar project owner that really has the greatest responsibility, and in the next slide we'll delineate exactly what those responsibilities are. And it's also the utility that has the responsibility for essentially tracking the amount of power that comes out of the system and that is sent to each subscriber, because the utility, which in this case is Con Edison, is going to continue to bill the subscribers for the electricity that they consume, less what is generated and taken off the community shared solar system. So the utility and the owner are the primary responsibility holders in this. Again, NYCHA is just the host, and the customer is just the customer. They just enjoy the benefits of the solar, not have to worry about anything regarding ownership, maintenance, or care like that. So the developer's responsibility, as you can see here spelled out on the slide, is to find a suitable host site among the properties that NYCHA has, and then negotiate the terms of the installation with NYCHA. The developer is also going to have to arrange for the financing that's going to pay for this solar installation. The developer is going to have to sign up off-takers. This is the customer acquisition phase. And it's also here where the community organizations can be of great assistance because of their presence within the community and their relationship with low and moderate income customers to assist developers in identifying and signing up off-takers who will subscribe to the power for these community shared solar systems. The utility, Con Ed, is going to be working with the developer because, first of all, they're going to have to interconnect the system with their local distribution system and also handle all the billing functions. Again, tracking the power that's produced by the system and where it's going and how the bills of the off-takers are going to be impacted by the receipt of that power. And finally, it's going to be the developer's responsibility to build and manage the project. That includes the actual installation, all of the permitting, the interconnection, the maintenance, the operation of the system. It's the developer's system. It's not NYCHA's system. It's not the subscriber's system. So the developer is going to be chiefly responsible in this regard. So that's a brief overview of community solar and how it works. Now I'd like to turn it over to Ben Foster from ICF, who's going to talk about the kinds of buildings that are available in the NYCHA portfolio. Ben?
Great. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. We'd like to provide some examples of the types of sites in the portfolio that you can expect to see in the public purpose shared solar program. As Daphne had mentioned earlier, there will be hundreds of sites that will be part of this portfolio. We're going to look at a couple of different types of buildings here just to illustrate what you might expect. Now, you've heard earlier that the target potential solar PV size for this group of sites is under 40 kilowatts, under 40 kW. Now, that was based on an initial remote estimate coming from the NY Solar Map tool, which is very useful, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. And that was done on an individual building level. Now, you'll see there are two main types of buildings or opportunities that exist across the portfolio. On the left is a standalone building here at the Morris Park Senior Citizens Home. On the right are clusters of buildings in the Washington Heights Rehab development. Now, it's likely that each building in that cluster on the right would need all of its own interconnection, design, permitting work individually, but it certainly could be planned and scheduled and built together. So we're looking at different opportunities in each of those, or we're providing opportunities for you to look at in each of those different types of buildings and developments. So on the next slide, Ron, are the satellite views of these same two developments. So on the left, what was estimated at Morris Park is a 32 kW system. Now, what you see is an outline of those same buildings in picture form. In the satellite, the space that was determined to be used from the New York solar map discounts certain factors of setbacks and shading, et cetera, but it's just a preliminary assessment tool and not detailed. On the right, then, you'll see Washington Heights rehab, and you'll see 4 outlines roughly, each of multiple parts of a building, or one building may have multiple areas within it. It could be developed rooftop areas. Each one of those are somewhere between 15 kilowatts and 30 kilowatts, but combined, it's 110 kilowatts. So while we said earlier the target cutoff was 40 kilowatts, that was for an individual building, but these clusters may yield a larger opportunity than just 40 kW. Now, it's important to find ways to aggregate these sites for maximum impact and lowest cost, but that's up to the developer or the partner that chooses to begin the process of developing these. Now, we've not performed any on-site evaluation for these buildings and do not intend to, but we have gathered a number of different site attributes that are relevant, and they will be made available. Next slide. We'd like to remind you all that the NY Solar Map tool is out there and is available for you and is comprehensive in terms of its availability of data for all of the sites that we've listed, in fact, all the sites across the NYCHA portfolio. And so as you go in to investigate and further drill down into those, feel free to go to NY Solar Map, and we encourage you to do so to understand where those estimates came from, what other potential opportunities there may be in surrounding buildings, what are some of the attributes that the NY Solar Map picked up that may not be included in the database that's provided from NYCHA. So this is a great tool available to you, and it is an integral part of how these initial assessments were performed. So with that, I'll turn it back to Daphne.
Thank you. So now I would like to provide an overview of the process and preliminary timeline for the public purpose shared solar NYCHA initiative. So the first phase of this process is program development, which we are currently doing. So we are working, as Ben mentioned, on the list of available sites. With all the data that we will have collected, and this list will be made available for public on the New York City Open Data Portal in a couple of months probably, and we will communicate about this. At the same time, we are going to build a web platform for proposers to be able to submit their application. The second phase is the submission of proposals and the review of proposals. So proposers will be using the platform to submit the proposals, and NYCHA will convene a selection committee to review and approve the feasibility proposals. What we will be looking for during this review is really to see if the proposal goals are aligned with NYCHA's goals, and to check if all the parameters are in place so that the project can be implemented. The third phase is the project development. So once the proposals have been selected, the developers will be granted an audit and inspection agreement to gain them access to the sites that they will have selected for their projects. So for a year, they will be able to access and audit the sites. As Ben mentioned, we haven't done any roof inspections for all those hundreds of buildings, so it will be up to the solar developer and its partners to perform this those inspections. And during those 12 months, the developer will develop a complete proposal, so including the technical proposal, the financial proposal, the workforce development proposal, and the LMI subscribers proposal, outreach proposal. Then we will be entering into a negotiation phase. So once NYCHA has received the final proposal, final and complete proposal, we will review and we will negotiate the proposal itself in terms of installation and terms for the agreement. And then the last phase will be the installation, meaning that the developer will install their systems on NYCHA buildings per the agreement's terms. In terms of timeline, what we envision is to be able to have the web platform available for submission in December this year, while the list of available sites will be made available earlier. We expect to have like 3 to 4 months to both submit proposals, for both developers to submit proposals and NYCHA to review with the help of the selection committee. Then there will be this 1 year of project development for proposers, and then we expect to have a negotiation period who could last 6 months. And then we will agree on the installation terms, meaning that we will have a duration for installation of the project, and because we have to make sure that the impact of the construction work is managed. A few more details in terms of proposal and submission review. So as I mentioned earlier, NYCHA will convene a selection committee composed of public agencies and subject experts. So for example, we will have NYCHA, of course, one of our partners. We will have the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and other experts. We will have NYCHA residents also sit on the selection committee because, as I mentioned on the NYCHA's goals under this program, we expect the programs to provide green jobs and career pathways to residents, and so we think it's critical that residents review the proposals with us, and of course we will have NYCHA staff review the proposal. Also, as I briefly touched on that, the selection criteria will include the question like, does the proposer make a strong case for meeting the public purpose goals? So as I mentioned previously, the job component, the LMI customers enrollment are really the 2 main goals of this program. So we will thoroughly review how the proposer intends to develop those 2 goals. And second of all, we will analyze how the proposer's team, what the proposer's team expertise in terms of implementation to be sure that the project is done. As Ben mentioned earlier, it will be up to the developer to select the buildings that they want to use for their project. So if the proposer takes a roof for project installation, we want to make sure that the project is implemented. Next slide, please. The project development phase will be, as I mentioned earlier, a 1-year phase, and to develop the proposals, the proposer will sign an audit and inspection agreement. It will allow him to access to the sites that he will have selected, but I want everybody to be aware that it will be a non-exclusive agreement because developers might want to look at the same sites. We might be able to show which sites are made available to whom, to be sure that everybody understands what's at stake. But at the end of the day, the final proposal might not use all the selected sites that a proposer has selected at the inception of its proposal. And this phase is expected to last 1 year, but of course, if a proposer develops its proposal in a shorter period of time, we will be able to review it before the end of the 1-year agreement. The final project proposals must include at least the technical feasibility study, a complete financial pro forma, and evidence of readiness to install within 12 months. I insist on the complete financial pro forma because, our goals are really to focus on green jobs for residents and LMI customers enrollment. The roof, the developer will have to demonstrate how the project benefits to LMI customers and NYCHA residents, and therefore explain what they can pay us, pay NYCHA for the lease of the roof. So we will have to look at the documents that demonstrate if the rent for the roof is, at the end of the day, very low. Next, please. So the license agreement for installation that we will sign together at the end of the process will recall the developer's responsibility in terms of installation, operation, and maintenance. As Ron insisted on earlier, NYCHA will have no role regarding the system. Once it's on the roof, it is completely operated by the developer. The agreement between NYCHA and the developer will also specify the commitment on green jobs to be provided to NYCHA residents. It will be a quantitative commitment, and it will explain how it's going to be reached. It will also, the agreement will also mention a quantitative commitment in terms of enrolling low and moderate income customers. Because those two commitments are what really NYCHA is looking for this program, we will include clawback provisions in case they are not met. Because again, if a solar developer uses NYCHA's roof, it has to be to provide the green jobs and to enroll LMI customers. And finally, developers will be asked to propose a fee financially viable for the project. As I mentioned before, NYCHA is open to understand the trade-offs that can be provided under this program, meaning that providing green jobs to residents and enrolling low and moderate income customers may lead the project developer to propose a very low fee for the roof, and we will look at it because we will have the pro forma. The developer will have provided this pro forma. So developers will be asked to propose a fee that makes the project viable. Next, please. Oh, Ron.
Okay, I'll take it from here, Daphne. Thank you very much for that that explanation. So, if anybody has comments or questions, we'd welcome you to send them in to us now. You can enter them in the dialog box that you see on your screen, or as I said, if you think of something later, you can send them to us at nysolar@cuny.edu. And just another reminder that if you missed any portion of this webinar, or if you'd like to share it with friends or colleagues, we are recording it, and we will post a copy of that recording on the New York Solar Mapping portal, and there you see the URL, www.nysolarmap.com. You can send us any questions, and what we will do is we will post, along with that recording, a document that will have all the questions and the answers as well. If you have specific questions, though, about the NYCHA Revitalize program, we'd recommend that you address them directly to Lori, and you can see her email there, lori.clark@nycerta.ny.gov. We've got a little bit of time, so let me see. We have some questions here. Sarah asked about the link of the website that was mentioned where we can see if our area is eligible. Not sure eligible for what, but the links that we had on the NYCHA slides takes you to the page on NYCHA's website where you can find out more about the Revitalize program and get all the details there. We have a question here. In my example of shared solar, the off-takers were in different boroughs. Is Con Ed currently able to track how much of the generated electricity gets delivered to each of these far-flung off-takers? Is there a guarantee to the customer that their electric bill will be less? Can you provide discrete example? Oh, that's a separate question. It's my opinion that as long as the off-takers are within a zone within Con Ed's territory, and that extends through the 5 boroughs, that they can participate in community shared solar. So as we showed in the example, you could have a solar system installed on a NYCHA property in Brooklyn that serves families in Queens, families in northern Manhattan, and families in the Bronx. So it has to be within the zone. We have a question here. Could you provide discrete examples of how a solar developer would create jobs for NYCHA residents? Let me turn that one over to Daphne, if you will.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, for any construction program that we do at NYCHA, contractors are required to hire NYCHA residents. So in that sense, a solar installer would hire NYCHA residents to install the panels. So so it would be like the first way, but any other maybe administrative job also could also be provided to NYCHA residents. So any job that a solar developer is using to develop their projects should be made available partly for NYCHA residents.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. We have a question here from Mike who asks, maybe 50 kW size simplifies as it matches NYCHA's sunblock incentive. I don't know if Lori, you can speak to that sunblock incentive.
Could you just repeat that question again, please?
Yeah, I don't. You should be able to see it on your dashboard, but it looks like maybe less than or greater than 50 kW size simplifies as it matches NYCHA's sunblock incentive. And by the way, if we have questions here that we're not able to answer right now, we promise that we will research those answers and post them along with all the other questions and answers with the recording on the nysolarmap.com website.
So, Ron, I believe they're talking about NYCHA's New York Sun Program Opportunity Notice 3414, which is funding for the technical assistance or pre-development solar projects, and projects that are going under the NYCHA program is also eligible to propose to PON 3414.
Okay. Maybe we'll look into that one and see if we can provide a more detailed response to Mike. Sarah again asks about roof access. Can roof access for potential developers be arranged before feasibility proposals are due? And I'll ask Daphne to address that.
So the first step for the proposals will be done through the web platform, and this is not what we call feasibility proposals. So it will be like preliminary proposals, I would say, explaining the sites that a developer wants to develop for solar installation, and explaining the goals in terms of green jobs and LMI customers enrollment. Then, if after selection, I mean, if the project proposal is selected because it makes sense and it seems it seems viable and feasible, the developer will have a 12-month period to develop its feasibility proposal, feasibility and then complete proposal. Sorry. So we are thinking about how everything will be arranged, but from our point of view now, we probably won't be able to let potential developers have access to the roof before they submit any preliminary proposal on the web platform, but then they will have complete access to the selected sites once they are selected. And as I mentioned earlier, a proposer might select maybe 10 buildings and at the end of the day develop a complete proposal only for 3 of them, because those are the ones that fit the project.
Okay. Another question for you, Daphne. How many developers can be awarded contracts from NYCHA for the CSS systems? Will all developers who submit feasible initial proposals be invited to the 12-month access and inspection phase?
The quick answer is yes. All developers who submit a proposal that goes through the process of being reviewed by the selection committee and makes sense for the goals of the program will be granted a license agreement to do the audit. Again, if a proposer includes 200 buildings in its proposal, we'll look deeply into it, because we don't want, of course, proposers to compete, but we cannot exclude that developers will be wanting to look at the same buildings through this 12-month period. But again, we'll try to provide this information as soon as possible.
Okay. We have another question here from Sarah, who asks, how much of the roof leasing fee will the host NYCHA development get from the developer versus NYCHA as a whole? So I guess what the question is, Daphne, is that if a solar system is put on the roof of one of the buildings in the Queensbridge North development, just to throw out a name, will Queensbridge North get the money, or will it go to the general NYCHA pot?
For the moment, what is envisioned is that it will go to the general NYCHA pot, because there is no means to direct this money directly to the development. And it's not NYCHA's policy also.
Okay. We have another question here, again regarding NYCHA, that if we say that NYCHA has no role in all of this, how is roof access negotiated for repairs, etc.? So I guess what she's asking is if the developer is going to be responsible for the operation and the maintenance of the system, how will they coordinate with NYCHA to get access to the system when they need to tend to it?
Oh, I mean, everything will be detailed in the agreement. Of course, NYCHA has a role in the fact that NYCHA will remain the owner of the building on which the panels will be installed. So anything related to gaining access to the roof will be described in the agreement, and anything that the developer will be negotiated to be sure that the project is operated and maintained, and at the same time that NYCHA oversees the management of its property.
Okay. We have a question here. There was a term that was used during the presentation, financially viable. And the questioner asks, what does financially viable mean in terms of the roof fee?
Well, NYCHA's portfolio of building is its assets. And so NYCHA's assets are its buildings. So we also, of course, we want to make the most of it. This solar initiative is called public purpose shared solar because, again, our primary goals are the green jobs and the LMI customers enrollment. At the same time, we cannot give away our assets. So we want to make sure that if a developer is able to pay a certain amount of money for a roof rent, we wanted to pay NYCHA as it would pay any other landlord or building owner. As our goals are on green jobs and LMI customers, we know that it will take some resources from the developers, so it will be a balance between those goals and the rent that can be paid to NYCHA. So financially viable means some rent that doesn't compromise the success of the installation, and that at the same time does not bargain NYCHA's assets.
Okay. One more question here that Stephen is asking. In low-rise NYCHA properties, could residents benefit from traditional behind-the-meter rooftop solar rather than the community shared solar model?
So we have around 10,000 residents who pay their electric bills directly to the utility. All the other buildings are master metered. So for the buildings that will be picked by the developers and where residents pay their own utility bills, yes, there will be an opportunity. No, there won't be an opportunity for behind the meter because they will be enrolled in community shared solar anyway. But the solar installation can target the NYCHA residents in the buildings because they pay their own utility bills. Ron, you want to complete the answer maybe?
I think, and I don't want to, speak for NYCHA on this, but I think that this program is dedicated to community shared solar systems, and I think that there is a good opportunity for behind the meter systems as part of the commercial solar RFP. You're right. There are only about 6% of NYCHA residents who pay their bills directly to Con Ed, but that's something that we can explore down the line. Sam writes here, with the sunset of the investment tax credit, which is going down, from 30% and ultimately down to 10%, would NYCHA consider expediting their timeline to make projects more economically viable? Well, you know what, we can address that in the written comments if.
I just want to give some explanations about the timeline. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we have two programs, solar programs, that are developed by NYCHA. The first one is a commercial one, and the second one is a public purpose shared solar one. We don't want the developers to have to develop proposals for those two programs concurrently, because it's we know it's a lot of work. So we have designed the timeline so that solar developers can put together proposals for the RFP that will be out late September. And once it's done, they can focus on the public proposed shared solar if they want to. So because there might be different categories of solar developers, but still, we don't want those programs to compete. But after the threshold, the key date of the end of 2017, once the process for the community shared, the public purpose shared solar system is in place, then if developers want to develop its proposal in 4 months instead of 12 months, that will be perfect. So we can definitely expedite the system if the developer provides complete proposals much sooner than expected.
Okay, and actually Matt asks a question that kind of dovetails with that. He says, if a developer submits a proposal in month 3 of the access period, can NYCHA approve those proposals before the end of that full 12-month period?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
12 months is like what we expect the developer to need, but if they are much faster than that, that's perfect for the program.
Thank you, Daphne. We're running low on time here, so I think we'll wrap this up. Again, thank you all for participating. Thanks to our presenters, Daphne, Ben, Lori, and thanks to all of the attendees. We had a great turnout for this webinar. We've got a lot of questions here. We are going to be sitting down shortly to go over these questions, prepare responses, and post them on the New York Solar Map and Portal website along with a recording of this webinar. Again, if you happen to think of anything after we wrap up here, you can send them to us at nysolar@cuny.edu. You can send specific questions about the NYCHA Revitalize program to Lori at her email address, lori.clark@nycerta.ny.gov. And if you haven't downloaded the slide deck, you can do that right now from the handout section. That will have all of the URLs and email addresses in there. Again, thanks to everyone for participating, and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye now.